we wanted to go back and talk about how to make a game bred bandog and how it is actually possible, contrary to what most, or what, I'm not going to say most, but what many people think.
Oh, 99% of the people think it's impossible. But that's because 99% of the people out there in the world don't do their work, and they don't study, and they don't learn genetics, and they don't do their research, and they just repeat what other people have done. It's the 1% of the population that breaks new ground.
Right.
And the reason they break new ground is because they do the work, they do the study, they do the research, they find a way. They refuse to fail. They may fail, but they refuse to submit to failure. They keep moving forward, learn from the successes of others, and they learn from the failures of, and then they do what others have not thought of and break new ground. And that's why the airplane was invented, and people go to the moon and fly in outer space and achieve things that had previously been thought impossible.
So,
but it's silly. I don't understand why people think it's impossible. They're really small-minded, because you can look at even the American Pit Bull Terrier itself. It did not exist the whole time. I mean, that breed itself was originated just 150 years ago or so, So if the American Pit Bull Terrier can be created by cross-breeding bulls and terriers, bulldogs and terrier dogs, to create the American Bull and Terrier, or Pit Bull and Terrier, at one time called the Bull and Terrier, but now it's called the Pit Bull Terrier, then if they can do it with the Pit Bull Terrier, they can do it with another dog, if somebody's dedicated to do it. The question is, do you have the population size? Do you have the patience? Do you have the right selection criteria? Richard Stratton believes that the American Pit Bull Terrier is basically just a bulldog without terrier influence, and it kind of cracks me up, because I respect Richard Stratton. We all have our own views on things, but in the early 1900s, there was a magazine called The Bull and Terrier, and I saw one of the first dogs imported to the United States that was registered as, later became registered as American Pit Bull Terrier, was a dog that was 17 pounds. I mean, how are you going to tell me that's not a terrier? That's not a bulldog.
So for the listeners, let's just go back to number one, why you wanted to do what you did, and then two, I mean, obviously your formula can't really be copied and get the same results. So two, cover exactly, how you did what you did,
The reason I do what I do is because I believe in, if you can capture the American Pit Bull Terrier, its determination to complete a task, and a combative task, and use that dog where its combative tasks is not used for inhumane or unethical things, regardless of what a person's view is on various aspects of the American Pit Bull Terrier's history. If you can put those dogs in the hands of people that are going to use that potential for righteousness' sake, such as protecting your home or for hunting against like wild hogs that cause millions of dollars of damage in almost every state that they live in, then why not have a dog that's able to protect the hunters from the hogs by maintaining a solid grip on those hogs despite the stress of the combat? Hogs are dangerous animals. They attack hunters, they destroy property, and when dogs are used for hunting, a lot of dogs get really injured from hogs. But one of the dogs that does the best is a dog that can grab that hog by the ear, or in some cases, maybe on the muzzle or the cheek or the neck, but generally speaking on the ear. And when it's cold, it stays in like glue. Those are the dogs that are least likely to get injured, because when they slip their grip or they lose their grip, they let go on purpose, any of those things, the hog is able to get under the dogs a lot easier and get the dog. So you need a dog, if you're going to do something like that, that stays glued to its grip. And the American Pit Bull Terrier is one of the dogs that does that. The other thing about the pit bull is in a protected type of situation, they get a bad rap because of their ancestry. But, if a criminal comes in my house, that dog's lineage and evolution for its past can be an advantage, because that dog can take a grip on a perpetrator that's broken into my house and maybe attacking my daughter or something along those lines. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. And that dog will stay glued to its grip. And, as long as that dog is glued to its engagement, its grip on the bad guy, then that bad guy is not able to deal with my daughter. Now, in that regard, I think the American Pit Bull Terrier, if you have the right dog with the right temperament, can be a very effective family companion guardian. But it can't always stop the perpetrator. It can make the perpetrator deal with the dog, but if there's in close proximity to their target, they still may be able to harm, the perpetrator may still be able to harm their target, because we are talking about a lot of dogs that are in the 30 to 50 pound class with the purebred American Pit Bull Terrier. So if you can take that dog and make it bigger, now it's really going to slow down or possibly even stop completely the perpetrator from ever being able to encounter your family members, your loved ones, your friends. So the goal of the American Sentinel Canine program was to basically capitalize on the good traits of the American Pit Bull Terrier, but to make it stronger and more powerful, and also a little bit less social. Some pit bulls are very friendly with strangers. So I wanted to improve the loyalty in the dog, so it's not necessarily friendly with everybody. It's friendly with my family, and it's friendly with people that it knows. But if you're outside of our circle of trust, the dog shouldn't just be really extremely social in a friendly way. It may be tolerant under my guidance, and in time become social, but you have that circle of trust. To me, a good dog is like a good spouse. It can be friendly. It can be friendly with strangers, but not too friendly. Not sleeping around with them, not wanting to play and kiss them, just polite. Until it's time to not be polite. And so that's why I wanted, a determined game type dog to use for protection work. And, as far as how do I do it? Well, this is where a lot of people have messed up. A lot of people don't want to do the work. It's part of human nature to try to take the easy way out of things. They want to breed the dog down the street, or the dog that buddy has, or the dog at the local club, or the dog that they heard was good, but they never verified it. And the reason they don't verify it is because they don't know how to verify it, and they don't know how to, people don't know how to read a pedigree. It's really pretty sad how a lot of the people that are professionals in the canine community might be good at one thing, but they tend to be pretty terrible at understanding genetics or pedigrees. And, before anybody's going to ever produce a game bred bandog, they're going to have to realize they're going to have to use components that have the traits that you're looking for. So, to get a American Sentinel that displays performance with the same intensity as a game dog and same duration as a game dog, that means I'm going to have to use a lot of game dogs in my genetics. And so a lot of people, here's another fallacy. People think just because it's a pit bull, it's a game dog. That's not true at all. We've discussed before the different registries that are out there. The AKC reads Amstaffs, which is completely different from the American Pit Bull Terrier. People think it's the same because 150 years ago they may have all came from that same original population. But there's something called genetic drift. And genetic drift is how the alleles in a population will change over time in order to, as a result of the breeding selections. And so the alleles in the population change and the dogs become different. And after genetic drift happens long enough, you eventually have what's called divergent evolution. Divergent evolution means you get two different products from the same origins because they have different selective measures. So in biology, there's many examples of this. And it's the same thing that's happened with the Amstaff and the American Pit Terrier. So, even though they may have came from the original dogs, they have diverged. So I would never use Amstaff blood because Amstaff blood is showbred dogs. And I would not use the majority of pit bull blood, the American Pit Bull Terrier blood, if it doesn't come through working camps. I'm not going to use any UKC dogs. I'm not going to use any purple ribbon dogs. I'm not going to use any showbred dogs because those dogs are not required to display the performance traits that's required of a game dog. If you want game-bred bandogs, you have to have the game-bred traits. And the game-bred traits are going to come from the true American Pit Bull Terrier that came through the evolution of working camps where performance was tested. And that way you're going to have to know that not only are you dealing with a dog that's coming from a breeder that's selecting for these performance-based traits, but you should also check the pedigree and make sure that their whole ancestry dates back to performance-based traits through working camps that were breeding towards the performance of gameness combat. And then when you have a dog whose entire lineage for the last 150 years has been solely obtained and selected from gene pools where they were performance-based game dogs, now you're going to capture some of those traits. But remember, the pedigree is important because anytime you introduce an outside component, you're going to lose various things. So when you take a dog like this and you breed it to a Mastiff, there goes your gameness. You might occasionally catch an anomaly, but those anomalies aren't going to reproduce themselves because half their gene pool comes from non-game stock, being the Mastiff. And this is something that separates us from some of the other programs. A lot of people breed back to Mastiffs, and then after they do that and they get their F1s, what do? They want more size, so they breed the Mastiffs again. And when you start moving up to 75% Mastiff, that means you can forget about having game-bred dogs because your pedigree is no longer coming from the lineage of game dogs. And so that's something that's different about ours. If you look at our program and look at our pedigrees, you'll see that not only have we incorporated game dogs from working camps, and those dogs can be traced through, like I said, a lineage back to the original dogs that were imported, but the difference between us and them is, the AKC can be traced back as well, but it didn't stay in that working gene pool the whole time. It diverged and got away from it. And so even though the ancestry may be there from 100 years ago, the evolution of that ancestry has been lost. And that's why the Amstaffs have diverged. And that's why the UKC American Pit Bull Terriers have diverged. And even all that's basically left is the ADBA. But even 90% of the dogs in the ADBA are not going to be true game-bred dogs. So, because there's a lot of pit bulls that are just pet breeders or show breeders. The ADBA does dog shows too. So, you have to have dogs that are coming through that performance-based selection criteria the whole time. And then when you breed to that Mastiff, you take that offspring and you find those anomalies that display the commitment that you expect to see. And then you breed those anomalies together or back to game dogs again. So you're going to be increasing your percentage of the American Terrier blood. But not only are you increasing the percentage, you have to keep selecting for it time and time and time again. And you're going to lose some size when you select for these, or breed back to these dogs that have higher percentage of game dogs in them. But in time, you'll eventually have the size if you select for size and gameness. But shortcuts don't work. When we breed our dogs back to game dogs, we're going to increase our chances of capturing those game traits. And with the selection criteria, only if you know how to recognize those traits. But it's extremely important to look at the ancestry of these dogs as almost as if it's the Holy Grail. You have to really protect the lineage of these dogs. And when you outcross these dogs on purpose, you have to understand that you're giving up the Holy Grail because you're trying to bring in a new trait. being the size or the loyalty. These are the two traits that I'm trying to add to the American Pit Bull Terrier. Add some size and add some loyalty. And some people might take offense to what I mean when I say loyalty because they think their pit bull is really loyal. Let me define what I mean by loyalty. It's a dog that's friendly to me and friendly to the family and friends, but it's not friendly to strangers. A dog that's playfully friendly and giddy and happy-go-lucky with strangers is a dog that he loves you, but he loves everybody else too. And this is not a good trait for a guard dog. A guard dog should not be sleazy friendly with everybody else. So that's what I mean by loyalty. It's not that I'm not saying pit bulls don't love their owners. They do love their owners. They just love other people also. And this is something that we have to correct. So we're adding size and we're adding loyalty. And by protecting the most important aspects of determination, which is another word for gameness, the dog that doesn't quit is the dog that's determined. Then by continually selecting for that determination, we keep those traits. And yeah, we occasionally have a dog that's not as big as we want. And sometimes we have dogs that are bigger than we expect. And we can, if that dog, that's big dog, has the determination traits, we can use it. And if the big dog does not have the traits of determination, I don't care how pretty it is, I don't care how big and strong it is, it's not determined, it's not determined. Because what good is power if the power refuses to turn on? If the dog has no will. So the will and the determination is the most important criteria. So this is why you have to be back to those dogs that just never say quit. A dog that's full steam ahead, and if there's any regrets, we'll deal with that tomorrow, because today I'm going to win. Our dogs are line bred on game dogs. Even our American Sentinels, they're line bred on game dogs. They're not line bred on the Mastiffs. If you line breed on Mastiffs, you're going to get big, lazy Mastiffs. That's not what I want. I want an animal that's like sprung steel. It's just a spring, solid, clean, fit, athletic, powerful animal. Just bigger than a pit bull. If you just imagine the perfect pit bull and increase its size and increase its loyalty, that's what I want. And most people don't want that. Most people that breed Bandogs want a Mastiff. And that's why they don't have game-bred Bandogs, because you're not going to get game-bred Bandogs from Mastiffs. You're just not going to get it. All right, so for the most part, our dogs are going to be about 5'8", which is 62.5%. But I don't get hung up on percentages, because percentages is just a percentage of the genome. It's not necessarily a yes or a no on passing the test. The test is what decides if the dog makes it or not. So some dogs may have less percentage and still pass the test. Other dogs may have more percentage and pass the test, or may have more percentage and fail the test. So it's really about the traits. Having this dog with the traits is far more important than having a dog with a percentage. Because if the percentage is there but the trait is missing, then that's the wrong percentage. Percentages are far less important. It's all about does the animal have the traits. And as a result of protecting the traits, we have gone back to game dogs. And this increases the percentage of game dogs in our program compared to most band dog programs. Because most band dog programs prioritize size. They want big dogs. To me, it always kind of cracks me up when I see somebody have a dog that's 20 pounds overweight and they're bragging about how big they are. Because if that dog would lose 20 pounds, it would actually be more dog. Because it would be in shape. And so, the size of the animal is irrelevant if the performance was not there. Got to have the performance. I know one dog in particular that is, people think he's a game dog, and he is not a game dog. He has a dog in his pedigree that was considered by some to be a game dog, but even that dog is highly questionable. I won't mention his name in your video, but that dog was known to obtain his accolades dishonestly, And then that dog was bred down from some Colby blood in the 80s, basically, which has not been tested since prior to the 50s and 30s. Yeah, Colby blood was tested dogs, but after the 1960s, I mean, who's really using Colby dogs? Nobody's really using Colby dogs anymore. And that dog was Colby, bred back to some purple ribbon UKC stuff, bred back to some unknown stuff, and then they took that and bred it to a AKC or a UKC Amstaff type dog. I say AKC or UKC because, in my opinion, the UKC American Pit Bull Terrier has more in common with the AKC Amstaff than it does a true game dog. So they bred that back to some watered down wannabe called pit bull that's not even a real pit bull, and people in the protection dog world think this dog is a game dog, and anybody that knows how to read a pedigree will see the holes right in that dog's pedigree. You got Amstaff blood and American Bully. There's American Bully in the bottom quarter of his pedigree. And then you go to the top 3/4, which is the top half, and then the top of the bottom, which is, when I say the top of a pedigree, that means the sire. When I say the bottom of a pedigree, that means the mother. So if we go to the mother's mother, that's the bottom quarter. In the bottom quarter of that particular dog, the dog is an Amstaff or UKC Pit Bull bred back with American Bullies. Well, that's not your performance game dogs. You're not going to get performance game dogs out of that. If you go to the top of the bottom, which means the mother's father, and you see this dog who is bred down from purple ribbon dogs and UKC dogs and the KC dogs and the Colby blood and the purple ribbon stuff. And then the dog's father is also that same father of the mother. So it's a father-daughter feud, where the father was bred back to his daughter to make this dog. And anybody that knows how to read the pedigree knows that there's holes in Colby blood because it hasn't been tested for 40, 50 years. There's holes in purple ribbon stuff, which is UKC stuff, which is all show-based line. They're not, people that are involved in game dogs are not using the UKC, so that's not a performance-based registry. Some people will argue, well, no registry tracks the performance venues of the dogs. The people that are involved in working game dogs are not using the UKC. So if they're not using the UKC, anything that's purple ribbon stuff or UKC stuff is based off of the bred, or based off of being bred for pedigree and being bred for show. That's what they're for. They're not being bred for performance. Mm-hmm. So if you want performance-based dogs, you got to go through performance-based camps. And you're not going to know if the dogs are coming from performance-based camps unless you go out and do your homework. Mm-hmm. That's why people fail. That's why they don't breed game dogs. That's why they don't breed game-bred band dogs, because they don't do their homework. They want to just instant gratification. They just want to buy something finished or make big claims and snap some pictures with photo shoots and, you know, girls in bikinis and fast cars and gold chains and make it till they make it. But that doesn't work in the performance arena.
Right.
You need to go to the garages that are building the performance engines. You don't go to a showroom and then buy a car because it looks pretty, but the engine has never been maintained. There's no oil in it, or the oil hasn't been changed in 20,000 miles. You know, and then take that animal or that car to the racetrack. You're gonna end up with failures. So, you know, you can have a pretty dog, but if the core, what's inside, has not been properly developed and tuned through performance-based selection criteria over time, and then protected through performance-based selection criteria over time, then you're not going to have a performance-based product. Mm-hmm. Performance-based product comes from performance selection. It's not an accident. It's evolution to success. The American Pit Bull Terrier, the Husky, if you want to call it a Husky, the Iditarod dogs, I should say, and the Greyhound are the three most harshest selected animals on the planet. Those Iditarod dogs pull a sled 2,000 miles in extreme temperatures. Wow, that is a major task. The racing Greyhound, it's not a coincidence, it's the fastest four-legged animal on the planet. I mean, second fastest. Of course, the cheetah's the fastest. The second fastest not a coincidence that the greyhound is the second fastest four-legged animal on the planet. You know, that's a product of man breeding the dog to race. There's a lot of animals faster than a regular dog, but they're not faster than the greyhound and the cheetah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's pretty amazing. But the man was able to do that through performance-based selection. The dogs that fail do not get to be bred. The dogs that win are pushed through evolution of selection criteria towards a certain niche. The niche is important. What is the niche of the AKC? Dog shows. What is the niche of the UKC? Show dogs or pretty dogs. What is the niche of the ADBA? Working dogs. But, and show dogs. And pets. All of them have pets. But the people that are involved in working dogs are all ADBA. They're not involved in UKC or AKC. What I'm talking about is, game dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to get dogs that are not just ADBA, but the working camps of ADBA. And then you're going to have to know the history of those animals. And you're going to have to do performance-based selection criteria. And you're going to have to test your dogs that you produce. Even if they're band dogs, you're going to have to let them get tired, run them, work them, and then see if they still engage after they're exhausted. Yeah, but never make an animal do something. You can't do that. You can't train determination. You can train dogs to sit and heel and be obedient, but you can't train determination. That's genetics.
And for the listeners, you said when you're looking for a working dog, you're going to go through the ADBA and you're going to go through the working camps of the ADBA. But I wanted to add, it's going to be tough to find the honest working camps of the ADBA.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah, you have to build relationships with people. And we can even extrapolate a little further on proof that the American Pit Bull Terrier and the Amstaff are different breeds. Some people say, well, it's the same breed because they have the same ancestry. If you want to use that argument, every single dog on the planet goes back to the wolf. They're all the same species. So we need to realize what the word breed even means. Breed does not mean species, because all dogs, whether it's a golden retriever, a chihuahua, or a Great Dane, they're all the same species. So what is a breed? If a breed is not a species, what is it? And what a breed is a population of animals that display traits required from their breed standard. And it's like a family. It's like a family or a pedigree or a gene pool of individuals that have the traits that fit that standard. And the standards for the UKC, ADBA, and AKC, for the Amstaff and the Pit Bull, their standards are different. And since they have different standards, they're not the same breed.
For sure.
Look at the breed standard. Look at the breed standards from those registries, and you'll see they have different breed standards. So they're not the same breed, because they're all the same species. So what is a breed? A breed is a population of individuals that fit the breed standard. And some people say, well, you can't make a new breed if they come from the same ancestry. I just said, all dogs are the same species. They come from the same ancestry. They're all domesticated from wolves. So if you believe that breeds exist, you're already acknowledging that divergent evolution is true. Because we have the German Shepherd, we have the Malinois, we have the Pit Bull, we have the Mastiffs, we have all these different breeds that are existing out there that have diverged, which means split apart, because they were selected towards different niches, which is a job. If all breeds can diverge from a single species because they had different performance selection, or different selection, it may not have even been performance, then the same is true for the Pit Bull. It just happened in the last 150 years, so people are kind of like argumentative about whether or not it's the same thing or not. It is the same thing. It just happened quicker. There's a lot of dogs out there. The bigger the population, the less time it takes. There's a reason that people at racetracks do not go to the shade tree mechanic. You know, they go to state-of-the-art facilities to get their machines. And the same thing is true with, if you want to make game bred bandogs, you have to have connections with people that have real game dogs. But let me give you a scenario where a game was committed and may have saved a friend of mine's life. And that was Scratch's grandfather. We were hog hunting, and Scratch's grandfather, a dog named, his name was Little Rascal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Little Rascal was a dog that I owned, and we were hog hunting, and he caught a hog. And when he caught a hog, this particular hog, Keaton came in and grabbed the hog by its back leg, and that particular hog was going to be tied up for relocation. We had a permit or something like that where you can relocate a hog. But anyway, so we weren't going to kill this particular hog. And Little Rascal got cut, and he got cut bad. And Keaton was like, get Little Rascal out, because Little Rascal was determined to stay in there. Well, we break him off, and after we break him off, he's leaking, and blood's just pouring out of his shoulder, and he's cut up pretty good. And then when that happened, that hog spun around enough that it broke loose from Keaton, because he was standing, we're talking about in the woods, he's standing on logs and algae and slick, wet surfaces, and he falls over, and when he falls over, the hog breaks free and doesn't run off. It turns around and attacks Keaton. And I'll send you some photos of Keaton's back and his leg, and you can see that this animal was busting Keaton up. Well, I'm holding the catch dog, and even though the catch dog is busted up, we're now talking about a human being. So I release the dog, and even though the dog is busted up, he runs right back in there and drops the hog and pulls the hog off of Keaton, and Keaton gets back up. And then we said, forget about tying this hog up. We dispatched it because we had an injured human being and an injured dog. And if that dog was not a game dog, Keaton would have been in a lot of trouble.
Right.